The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure built from materials that shimmered with colors no human eye had ever seen. Inside, representatives from 12 different alien species sat in a circle, their forms ranging from the crystalline Velshara to the towering insectoid Zeth-Raki. They had gathered to discuss a problem that threatened their careful order of the galaxy. Ambassador Kreoth of the Velshara raised one of its translucent appendages. Its voice came through the translation devices as a melodic hum. "We have detected a new species expanding through the outer spiral arm. They call themselves humans. Our preliminary surveys show they are technologically primitive, yet they breed at an alarming rate and have established colonies on 17 worlds in just 3 generations." A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. It showed a blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star, followed by images of spacecraft, cities, and finally, recordings of human conflicts. The assembled species watched in silence as primitive humans fought each other with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. High Commander Zarthex of the Zeth-Raki clicked his mandibles together in what his species considered laughter. His exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber's lights, covered in markings that denoted hundreds of victories. This is what concerns the Great Council? These soft-skinned creatures barely have fusion technology. They fight among themselves like animals. One battle fleet would bring them to submission. The other species murmured their agreement. For over 2,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained peace through strength and careful management. New species were always brought into the fold, taught the proper way to exist among the stars. Those who resisted learned quickly that resistance was futile. Kreoth's crystalline form pulsed with concern. "I urge caution. Yes, they appear primitive, but their expansion rate is unprecedented. In the time we have observed them, they have doubled their colonial presence. They possess a determination that seems unusual." Zarthex stood, his massive form towering over most of the other delegates. "The Zeth-Raki have brought 63 species into the council. We know how to handle aggressive newcomers. Grant us permission to deliver the standard compliance message. If they refuse, we will demonstrate the consequences. A show of force at one of their outer colonies should be sufficient." The council voted. 10 species agreed with the Zeth-Raki approach. Only Kreoth and 1 other abstained. The decision was made. 3 weeks later, a human diplomatic vessel named the Horizon's Hope approached the council's designated meeting point. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge adjusting her uniform. She was a veteran of humanity's colony expansion program, chosen for this historic first contact because of her experience negotiating disputes between human settlements. She hoped those skills would translate to alien diplomacy. "We're receiving a transmission," her communications officer reported. Text and audio translated into standard English. Elena nodded. "Put it through." The message was brief and cold. Humanity was to cease all expansion immediately. They were to submit detailed reports of all their colonies, military capabilities, and resources. A council representative would arrive to oversee the integration of humanity into the galactic order. Non-compliance would result in corrective action. Elena read the message 3 times, feeling anger rise in her chest. "Prepare a response," she said carefully. "We come in peace and seek friendship with all species. However, humanity is a sovereign collective of free peoples. We will not submit to external control. We propose a meeting to discuss mutual cooperation and trade." The response came faster than expected. "Your defiance has been noted. You have 72 hours to reconsider." Elena reported back to Earth and the colonial governments. Emergency sessions were called. Debates raged for hours, but the conclusion was unanimous. Humanity had spent centuries fighting for freedom from tyranny. They would not surrender it to aliens no matter how advanced. The 72 hours passed. Commander Vasquez sent a final message. "Humanity chooses to stand free. We hope you will reconsider your position and meet us as equals." On the 5th day, the Zeth-Raki arrived at New Horizon, a farming colony of 40,000 humans on a planet with vast oceans and rich soil. The colony had minimal defenses, just a few patrol craft and a planetary shield generator designed to protect against asteroids. 20 Zeth-Raki warships appeared in orbit. They were impressive vessels, each one bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. High Commander Zarthex himself led the fleet, expecting this to be a simple demonstration. "Attention, New Horizon colony. His transmission boomed. You have been chosen to demonstrate the price of defiance. Surrender your facilities and your people will be relocated peacefully. Resist, and you will be removed by force. Governor Sarah Chen received the message in the colony's command center. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. Someone who had spent 30 years building this community from nothing. She looked at her staff, saw the fear in their faces, and made a decision. All civilians to the shelters. Activate all defenses. Send a message to Earth and every colony in range. Tell them what's happening here. She turned to her military advisor, a young man named Marcus, who had trained for scenarios they all hoped would never come. How long can we hold? Marcus checked his displays. Against that firepower? Hours at best. But we'll make them work for it. The Zethraki expected immediate surrender. Instead, the colony's shield flared to life. The few patrol craft launched, their crews knowing they were outmatched but refusing to go quietly. Ground-based railguns designed for mining operations swiveled toward the sky. Zarthex was surprised, then amused, then annoyed. He gave the order to begin bombardment. His ships opened fire, and the colony's shield blazed with absorbed energy. The human patrol craft darted between the massive warships, too small and fast to be easily targeted, stinging with their weapons like insects. One Zethraki destroyer took damage when a human pilot, his ship crippled and burning, rammed directly into its engine section. Both vessels exploded in a brilliant flash. Zarthex stared at the debris field in disbelief. The pilot had deliberately sacrificed himself. The battle lasted 4 hours. The colony's shield eventually failed under sustained bombardment. The railguns were destroyed. The last patrol craft fell from the sky in flames. But when Zethraki troops finally landed to secure the facilities, they found them rigged with explosives. Dozens of soldiers died in the blasts. The civilian population had evacuated to underground shelters that were far more extensive than the Zethraki had anticipated. When soldiers tried to enter, they met armed resistance. Every corridor became a battle. The humans used improvised weapons, mining equipment, anything they could find. They fought with a desperation and fury that shocked the invaders. By the time New Horizon finally fell, the Zethraki had lost over 300 soldiers and 2 ships, with a third badly damaged. The colony was secured, but it was a smoking ruin, and worst of all, the humans had broadcast everything. Every human colony now knew what was coming. Zarthex sat in his command chamber reviewing the battle reports. This was supposed to be a simple demonstration. Instead, it had been the bloodiest engagement the Zethraki had faced in decades. The humans had been outmatched in every way, yet they had fought as if they could win, as if surrender was not even a concept they understood. For the first time in his long military career, High Commander Zarthex felt a cold sensation he had not experienced since his youth. It took him a moment to recognize it: uncertainty. The news of New Horizons' fall spread through human space like wildfire. On Earth, in the lunar colonies, on Mars, and the distant settlements scattered across 17 star systems, people watched the recordings with horror and rage. They saw their fellow humans fight impossible odds. They saw the destruction of a peaceful farming colony. And they saw something else too, something that military analysts pointed out in their reports. The aliens had bled. High Commander Zarthex reported to the Galactic Council that the demonstration had been successful. The human colony had been subdued. He did not mention the casualties or the unexpected resistance. He requested 3 full battle fleets to complete the pacification of human space. The Council, confident in Zethraki military superiority, granted his request. On the human destroyer Indomitable, Captain Marcus Chen reviewed the tactical data from New Horizon for the 100th time. He was a lean man with sharp eyes and hands that never stayed still. He had spent 15 years in humanity's colonial defense force, most of it dealing with pirates and the occasional territorial dispute. Nothing had prepared him for interstellar war. "They're powerful," his weapons officer said, a woman named Rodriguez who had survived 3 engagements already. "But they're slow. Did you see how long it took them to retarget when our fighters changed vectors?" Marcus nodded. "They're used to fighting species that surrender. They've had it easy for too long." He looked at his crew, 28 men and women who had volunteered to stay aboard when they could have evacuated to safer positions. "We're not going to fight them the way they expect. We're going to make them afraid." Across human space, military commanders reached similar conclusions. Humanity could not win a direct confrontation. The Zethraki had superior numbers, better shields, stronger weapons. But wars were not won by technology alone. Humanity had learned that lesson in blood throughout their history. The first Zethraki battle fleet arrived at the colony of New Shanghai expecting another quick victory. Instead, they found the planet evacuated and the orbital facilities rigged with nuclear devices. When the Zethraki ships moved to investigate, the bombs detonated, catching 6 vessels in the blast radius. 3 were destroyed outright. The others limped away with severe damage. The second fleet approached the mining colony of Kepler Station more cautiously. They deployed scouts and ran multiple scans before advancing. They found the station operating normally, with life signs indicating a full population. When they moved to surround it, human ships appeared from behind the system's asteroid belt, emerging from hiding spots they had prepared weeks in advance. The battle was brief and brutal. The humans took heavy losses, but destroyed 4 Zethraki cruisers before retreating. High Commander Zarthex found himself fighting an enemy that refused to follow the accepted rules of warfare. Human ships would disable their own power cores to appear dead, then restart when Zethraki vessels came close to investigate. Human captains would broadcast surrender signals, then detonate their ships when boarding parties arrived. Automated drones, primitive by Zethraki standards but devastatingly effective, would attach to hulls and burrow through armor before exploding. The worst incident occurred at the Battle of Arcturus Gate. A major Zethraki fleet of 40 vessels moved to secure the strategic jump point. They were met by a human force of 18 ships. The battle lasted 7 hours. When it ended, 32 Zethraki ships remained operational. All 18 human vessels were destroyed. By any military calculation, it was a decisive Zethraki victory, but Zarthex stared at the casualty reports with growing dread. He had lost 8 ships. 8, against an enemy with half his numbers and inferior technology. His remaining vessels were damaged, his crew exhausted, and intercepted human communications showed they considered this battle a success. They had delayed the Zethraki advance by 3 weeks and forced the enemy to expend resources. To the humans, this was an acceptable trade. Meanwhile, human colonies transformed themselves into fortresses. Civilian factories retooled to produce weapons. Cargo ships were converted into military transports. Scientists worked around the clock to analyze captured Zethraki technology. What they discovered both excited and horrified them. The alien technology was advanced but standardized. The Zethraki used the same shield frequencies across their entire fleet. Their weapons operated on predictable power cycles. They were efficient, but they were predictable. Within 6 weeks of the war's start, human weapons began to change. Railguns were recalibrated to fire at frequencies that disrupted Zethraki shields. Missiles were programmed with erratic flight patterns that confused alien targeting systems. Human engineers took apart captured alien reactors and learned to build more efficient power systems for their own ships. Captain Chen and the Indomitable participated in a raid on a Zethraki supply convoy. His ship, along with 4 others, struck fast and hard, destroying 3 cargo vessels before vanishing into the dark between stars. The captured supplies included weapons, reactor components, and most valuable of all, encrypted communication logs. Human cryptographers broke the encryption in 3 days. What they found was enlightening. The Zethraki were confused, frustrated, and increasingly afraid. Their commanders argued about tactics. Their soldiers questioned why they were fighting. The logs revealed that in 60 years of conquest, the Zethraki had never lost more than 20 ships in any single campaign. They had already lost 37 fighting humans, and the war was only beginning. At the Galactic Council, Ambassador Kreoth watched the conflict reports with growing alarm. The Velshara had lived through countless wars in their long history. They had learned to recognize patterns that others missed. What Kreoth saw in the human resistance was something disturbing. This was not the desperate flailing of a primitive species. This was practiced, refined, efficient. The humans fought like a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. Kreoth requested access to Earth's historical databases. The request was granted, as the Council had obtained extensive information about humanity during their initial surveys. What Kreoth discovered in those databases would change everything. On the front lines, the war continued to intensify. Human casualties mounted, but so did those of the Zethraki. Every battle taught the humans something new. Every encounter revealed another weakness in the alien forces. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, but with growing momentum, the tide began to shift. Captain Chen sat in his ready room, reviewing reports from across human space. The Indomitable had survived 8 engagements. His crew had dwindled from 28 to 19, but they had destroyed or damaged 15 enemy vessels. He thought about the people on New Horizon, about Governor Chen and the colonists who had bought humanity time with their sacrifice. "Captain," Rodriguez called from the bridge, "we're receiving new orders. Fleet Command is assembling a strike force. They're calling it Operation Hellfire." Marcus stood and walked to the bridge. On his screen, he saw a list of 30 human ships designated for the operation. The target made his breath catch. They were not going to defend anymore. They were going to attack a Zethraki core world. The war was about to enter a new phase, one that would make what came before seem like a gentle prelude. And somewhere in the depths of space, High Commander Zarthex was beginning to realize that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not primitive aggressors who needed discipline. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors who had learned long ago that sometimes the only way to ensure peace was to make war so terrible that no one would dare start it again. 6 months into the war, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The chamber that usually echoed with measured debate now crackled with tension. High Commander Zarthex stood before the assembly, his exoskeleton no longer gleaming, but scarred from a recent battle where his flagship had nearly been destroyed. "The human forces have proven more resilient than anticipated," he said, his translator struggling to convey the frustration in his clicking mandibles. "We have suffered losses of 73 capital ships, 247 support vessels, and over 15,000 soldiers. These numbers exceed our casualties from the last 50 years of Council operations combined." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. A representative from the Corlix, a species of flying creatures with translucent wings, spoke up. "How is this possible? The humans barely have faster-than-light travel. Their weapons are primitive. Their ships are held together with what our analysts called optimistic engineering." Zarthex's mandibles twitched with what might have been shame or anger. "They adapt faster than any species we have encountered. They reverse engineer our technology in weeks. They employ tactics we have never seen. Tactics that violate every accepted principle of civilized warfare. They booby-trap their own dead. They broadcast false surrender signals. 3 of our commanders have died from gifts sent by supposed human defectors, gifts that turned out to be bombs." Ambassador Kreoth had remained silent throughout the session, but now the crystalline being rose. Its form pulsed with colors that the translator interpreted as deep concern. "I have been researching human history. With the Council's permission, I would like to share my findings." The permission was granted, though most of the representatives looked impatient. They wanted solutions, not history lessons. Kreoth activated a holographic display. Images from Earth appeared, scenes of human conflicts throughout their history. Humans have been a spacefaring species for only 200 years, but they have been a warfaring species for over 10,000 years. In that time, they have engaged in approximately 14,700 documented wars. They have fought each other continuously, refining their methods of destruction with each generation. The images changed, showing progressively more devastating weapons. Stone tools, metal swords, gunpowder, chemical weapons, nuclear bombs. The assembled species watched in growing horror. This weapon, Kreoth highlighted a mushroom cloud, was created and used by humans against themselves. They developed devices capable of destroying entire cities and rendering land uninhabitable for generations. They built enough of these weapons to sterilize their entire planet multiple times over. This was achieved before they had even left their own star system. A reptilian delegate from the Scorth hissed in disbelief. They would have destroyed themselves. Almost, Kreoth agreed. They came to the brink several times, but they survived. Every technology we employ in warfare, humans developed independently, usually earlier in their technological progression than any other known species. Biological weapons, chemical weapons, directed energy weapons, kinetic bombardment, automated killing machines, all of these exist in human history. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. The humans were not primitive. They were experienced. While the Council grappled with this revelation, Operation Hellfire launched. 30 human warships led by Admiral James Kovalenko aboard the battleship Retribution entered Zethraki space. Their target was Krixva, a Zethraki colony world with a population of 4 million and significant military installations. Admiral Kovalenko was a stocky man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. He had fought in the resource wars on Earth 40 years ago, back when humans had only killed other humans. He knew what this operation meant, what message it would send. All ships maintain formation, he ordered. Remember, we're not here to massacre civilians. Military targets only, but we need to show them that nowhere is safe. The human fleet emerged from their jump point at the edge of the Krixva system. Alarms blared on every Zethraki station and ship. A human force deep in their own territory. It was unthinkable. The defense fleet scrambled, 22 vessels moving to intercept. They outnumbered the humans, but they had not adapted to human tactics. The battle was fierce and costly. Human ships used the system's asteroid field for cover, emerging to strike and vanishing again. They deployed mines that tracked Zethraki engine signatures. They fired missiles that split into dozens of smaller warheads, overwhelming point defense systems. When the defense fleet was destroyed, the human forces approached Krixva. They did not bombard cities or civilian centers. Instead, they methodically destroyed military bases, weapons factories, and orbital shipyards. The Zethraki watched helplessly as decades of infrastructure burned. Admiral Kovalenko broadcast a message to the planet's population. This is a demonstration. We do not wish to harm civilians, but if this war continues, we will make your military infrastructure useless. Every shipyard, every base, every factory. You started this war. We will end it one way or another. The human fleet withdrew before reinforcements could arrive. They had lost 9 ships and over 3,000 crew members, but they had achieved something no enemy of the Zethraki had ever done. They had struck at a core world and lived to tell about it. The psychological impact was enormous. Zethraki civilians began demanding answers from their government. If the humans could reach Krixva, could they reach the homeworld? Other council species began questioning their support for the war. Some quietly sent diplomatic feelers to human representatives, testing the possibility of separate peace arrangements. Meanwhile, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo worked in a research facility on Mars, analyzing Zethraki psychology and developing strategies to counter their tactics. She was a xenobiologist who had spent her career studying alien life, never imagining she would use that knowledge for warfare. She had developed a comprehensive profile of Zethraki thinking, their cultural assumptions, their tactical doctrines. Her work had contributed to numerous human victories. It had also made her a prime target. The Zethraki strike team that captured her research station was not a military unit, but an intelligence operation. They wanted information, prisoners they could interrogate, propaganda victories they could use to restore morale. Dr. Okonkwo was perfect for their purposes. They brought her to a facility on an occupied human colony. The interrogator was a Zethraki called Vexlar, educated in human languages and culture. He believed he understood these strange creatures. "Why do you fight so hard?" he asked her. "You cannot win. Our numbers are superior. Our technology is more advanced. Yet you throw away lives in battles you cannot possibly win." Sarah looked at him with tired eyes. She had been awake for days, subjected to various intimidation techniques that the Zethraki believed were effective. "You don't understand us at all, do you? You see our tactics and think they're barbaric, uncivilized. You're right, they are. But they're also effective. Effective at dying," Vexler clicked. "Effective at survival," Sarah corrected. "Do you know what mutually assured destruction is? It's a doctrine humans developed in our nuclear age. The concept is simple. If you attack us, we will retaliate with such force that even if you win, you lose. Even if you destroy us, we'll make sure you're destroyed too. That's the calculation we're making now. We might not win this war, but we'll make winning so expensive that you'll wish you never started it." Vexlar tried to comprehend this logic. It was alien to him in ways he could not articulate. The Zethraki fought to expand, to grow stronger, but they were pragmatic. If a conquest became too costly, they abandoned it. There were always other worlds, other species, but humans seemed to view warfare differently. For them, it was not about gain. It was about survival, about principles, about things Vexlar could not fully grasp. "What do you call this?" he asked, genuinely curious. "This willingness to die for nothing?" Sarah smiled, though there was no humor in it. We call it spite. We call it vengeance. We call it making sure that even if we fall, we take you with us. Your people have been the galactic bullies for too long. You've forgotten what it's like to face someone who won't submit, someone who would rather burn the entire galaxy than kneel. The interrogation continued for days. Sarah told them everything they wanted to know about human psychology, about human history, about why humans fought the way they did. She was cooperative, almost eager to share. Vexillar reported to his superiors that the prisoner was broken, fully compliant. They decided to make an example of her. A propaganda broadcast showing a human scientist admitting to war crimes, begging for mercy. It would demoralize human forces and restore Zethraki pride. The broadcast was sent across all channels. But it did not have the intended effect. Sarah's confession was actually a detailed explanation of every atrocity humanity had survived and overcome. She spoke of genocide, of nuclear fire, of weapons that could kill billions, and she ended with a simple statement. We survived all of that. What makes you think you'll succeed where we failed? The Zethraki executed her after the broadcast, thinking they had scored a propaganda victory. Instead, they had created a martyr. Sarah Okonkwo's words spread through human space like wildfire. Ambassador Kreoth stood before the Galactic Council's central archive, a vast repository of knowledge spanning thousands of years and hundreds of species. For 3 days, the Velshara diplomat had been reviewing Earth's historical records in meticulous detail. What Kreoth discovered horrified it in ways that transcended mere fear. The archive contained everything: human art, literature, philosophy, and most critically, their complete military history. Kreoth watched recordings of ancient battles where thousands died with primitive weapons. It read accounts of sieges lasting years, where populations ate their own dead to survive. It studied the evolution of human warfare from clubs and stones to weapons that could split atoms and incinerate cities in microseconds. But what truly disturbed Kreoth was not the weapons themselves. It was the clinical precision with which humans documented their own atrocities. They had written detailed analyses of every genocide, every massacre, every war crime. They studied their mistakes not to bury them, but to understand them, to ensure they never forgot what they were capable of. Kreoth found records of something called the World Wars, conflicts so devastating that they had reshaped human civilization. In the first, 10 million soldiers died, along with millions of civilians. In the second, the death toll exceeded 70 million. Entire cities were reduced to ash. Populations were systematically exterminated based on ethnicity or religion, and yet, the humans survived. They rebuilt. They created international laws to prevent such horrors from recurring. They established organizations dedicated to peace. But they never forgot how to wage total war. Kreoth compiled its findings into a comprehensive report and called for an emergency council session. This time, every representative attended. The mood was grim. News had arrived that the Zethraki had lost their colony of Thexnor to a human assault. 3 more core worlds were under threat. Honored delegates, Kreoth began, its crystalline form pulsing with urgent colors. I have completed my analysis of human civilization. We have made a catastrophic error in judgment. The humans are not primitive aggressors. They are the most experienced warriors in the known galaxy. The chamber erupted in protest, but Kreoth continued, its voice cutting through the noise. Please allow me to present evidence. Human beings have been engaged in organized warfare for approximately 12,000 years. In that time, they have refined the art of killing to a degree that surpasses any known species. Every doctrine we employ in military operations, humans developed independently, usually centuries before they achieved spaceflight. Holographic displays filled the chamber, showing human conflicts throughout history. This is what they call the 100 Years' War. It lasted 116 years and involved multiple generations of combatants. This is what they call World War II. It lasted 6 years and killed 73 million people. This is what they call the Cold War. It lasted 45 years and involved 2 human factions building enough nuclear weapons to destroy their planet multiple times over, holding each other hostage under the threat of mutual annihilation. A delegate from the Kothron, a peaceful herbivorous species, made a sound of distress. They threatened to destroy themselves? Yes, Kreoth confirmed. And they maintained that threat for nearly half a century. They call it deterrence. The principle is simple. Make your enemy understand that victory would be so costly that war becomes unthinkable. They have been applying this principle to the Zethraki from the beginning. High Commander Zarthex, who had been summoned to the session, clicked his mandibles in denial. This is speculation. Yes, they have fought well, but they are still technologically inferior. We can still achieve victory. At what cost? Kreoth's question hung in the air. Commander, you have lost over 100 ships. Your casualty rates are 40 times higher than any previous campaign, and the humans show no sign of surrender. Quite the opposite. Their attacks are becoming bolder, their tactics more refined. Tell me, Commander, what do you think will happen when they fully reverse engineer our weapons? When they apply 12,000 years of warfare experience to technology equal to our own? Zarthex had no answer. The truth was, he had been asking himself the same question for weeks. Kreoth activated another display, this one showing a human document. This is from their historical records. It is called the Geneva Conventions, a set of rules governing warfare. Humans created these rules after experiencing the full horror of unlimited warfare. The rules include protections for prisoners, civilians, and non-combatants. They are quite comprehensive and remarkably humane. Then why do they fight so brutally? Someone asked. Because these are the rules they follow when fighting each other, Kreoth explained. When fighting an enemy that does not recognize these rules, humans default to what they call total war. The concept is simple. All resources, all tactics, all weapons are employed until the enemy is completely defeated or destroyed. No limitation, no mercy, no surrender. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Zethraki had started this war with contempt, viewing humans as primitives who needed discipline. In doing so, they had awakened something that had been dormant in human civilization for centuries. They had reminded humanity what it was like to face an existential threat. On the front lines, the war continued to escalate. Captain Marcus Chen and the Indomitable were part of a strike force attacking Zethraki supply lines deep in enemy territory. His ship had been repaired and upgraded 3 times now, incorporating captured alien technology into human designs. The result was a hybrid vessel that terrified Zethraki captains who encountered it. Contact, Rodriguez called out. Zethraki convoy, 12 vessels. 3 warships, 9 cargo haulers. Marcus studied the tactical display. Standard engagement pattern. Teams Alpha and Beta will disable the warships. We'll board the cargo vessels and take whatever we can before scuttling them. The attack was swift and efficient. Human ships moved like predators, coordinated and lethal. Within 30 minutes, the convoy was destroyed, and human boarding parties were transferring supplies to their own vessels. Marcus watched from his command chair, feeling neither joy nor satisfaction, only tired determination. One of the cargo vessels contained something unexpected: medical supplies, emergency rations, and civilian evacuation equipment. Marcus realized this was not a military convoy, but a humanitarian mission, probably heading to a colony damaged in fighting. He made a decision that would have surprised the Zethraki. Rodriguez, contact the surviving crew. Tell them they can take 1 shuttle with medical supplies and go. No weapons, no military cargo, just the medical supplies. His crew stared at him in shock. Rodriguez found her voice first. Sir, they're the enemy. They're wounded and trying to help civilians, Marcus said quietly. We're not fighting civilians. We're fighting their military. Let them go. The Zethraki survivors took the offer, probably expecting a trap. When they were allowed to leave unmolested, their confusion was transmitted in their ship's communications. Human forces monitored those transmissions, hearing Zethraki crew members struggling to reconcile this act of mercy with the brutal warriors they had been fighting. This pattern repeated across the war zone. Human forces would fight with devastating ferocity against military targets, but showed unexpected restraint toward civilians and wounded enemies. They would destroy a military base with ruthless efficiency, then risk their own lives to evacuate civilian populations from nearby areas. The Zethraki found this duality incomprehensible. How could the same species that employed suicide tactics and booby-trapped corpses also rescue enemy civilians from burning buildings? How could warriors who fought to the last bullet stop to render medical aid to wounded foes? Admiral Kovalenko explained it during a broadcast to Zethraki forces. We do not hate you. We are not fighting to exterminate you. We are fighting because you gave us no choice. You attacked our colonies. You killed our people. You thought we would submit. But submission means death to humans, just slower. So we fight. But we remember that when this war ends, we will need to live in the same galaxy. We remember that soldiers follow orders, and civilians are not soldiers. We remember our own history, and we refuse to repeat the worst parts of it. In the Galactic Council chamber, High Commander Zarthex finally admitted what his entire command structure had been whispering for weeks. We cannot win this war, not without losses that would cripple our civilization for generations. The humans will never surrender, and every battle costs us more than we can afford. Then what do you propose? The council chairman asked. Zarthex's mandibles drooped in a gesture of defeat. We sue for peace immediately, before they realize they have already won. The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates argued for escalation, for bringing the full might of the council to bear, but others, the wiser ones, saw the truth. Humanity was not like other species the council had encountered. They could not be intimidated into submission. They could not be worn down through attrition. They would fight until they won or until everyone was dead. And most terrifying of all, they had the experience and the will to make that threat credible. Ambassador Kreoth spoke into the chaos. We have been the dominant power in this galaxy for 2,000 years. The peace conference was held on a neutral station near the border between human and Zetharaki space. The location was deliberately chosen, a small trading post that belonged to neither side but had been damaged in the fighting. Its scarred walls and patched hull served as a reminder of what this war had cost. Commander Elena Vasquez arrived aboard the Horizon's Hope, accompanied by a small delegation of diplomats, military advisors, and politicians from various human colonies. She had aged in the past year. Her hair showed more gray, and lines had deepened around her eyes. She had spent the war coordinating diplomatic efforts, trying to prevent the conflict from spreading while simultaneously preparing for the peace that she hoped would eventually come. The Zetharaki delegation arrived in a damaged cruiser that still bore scorch marks from a recent battle. High Commander Zarthex led the group, his exoskeleton showing cracks and repairs that would have been shameful to display in peacetime. But these were not peaceful times, and the Zetharaki had learned that human respect came from honesty, not posturing. The first meeting was tense. Elena and Zarthex sat across from each other in a simple conference room, translators humming between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Zarthex broke the silence. You fought well, better than I thought possible. You fought honorably once you learned what that meant to us, Elena replied. But too many died before we reached this moment. Yes. Zarthex's mandibles clicked in what Elena had learned was a gesture of regret. I underestimated your species. I thought you were primitive, that a show of force would bring submission. I was wrong. You were, Elena agreed. But you're here now. That takes courage. Many of your people would call this surrender. It is surrender, Zarthex said bluntly. We cannot win this war, even if we eventually destroyed all your forces. The cost would leave us vulnerable to other threats. And I suspect we would not destroy you. You would simply fight harder. Elena nodded slowly. That's probably true. Humans have a saying, the only thing more dangerous than a cornered animal is a human with nothing left to lose. You would have had to kill every last one of us, and we would have made sure to take as many of you with us as possible. Why? The question seemed torn from Zarthex. Why fight so hard? Why not negotiate, compromise, find a middle path? Because you didn't offer a middle path, Elena said. You offered subjugation. Humans spent thousands of years fighting against tyranny, against those who would control us, enslave us, dominate us. We've built our entire civilization on the principle that all beings deserve freedom and self-determination. When you attacked New Horizon, when you demanded our submission, you weren't just threatening our colonies. You were threatening the core of what makes us human. Zarthex absorbed this. The Galactic Council maintains order. Primitive species need guidance. We're not primitive, Elena said firmly. We're different. There's a distinction. And we don't need guidance, we need partnership. Equals working together, not masters and servants. The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. The Galactic Council sent Ambassador Kreoth to mediate, and the Velshara diplomat proved invaluable in bridging the gap between human and Zetharaki thinking. Humanity's demands were straightforward. Full recognition of human sovereignty, reparations for damaged colonies, immediate cessation of all hostilities, return of all prisoners, and most importantly, a seat on the Galactic Council. The last demand caused the most controversy. Several council species argued that humanity was too new, too aggressive, too unpredictable to be given such authority. But Kreoth countered with simple logic. Humanity has proven they cannot be controlled. They can only be partnered with. If we deny them a voice in galactic affairs, we leave them outside our system with every reason to resent it. Better to include them, to give them a stake in maintaining the peace. Besides, Kreoth's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been amusement. I suspect we could use their perspective. We have grown comfortable, perhaps too comfortable. Humanity will keep us honest. The final treaty was signed on the first anniversary of the attack on New Horizon. Elena Vasquez represented humanity, her signature binding dozens of colonies and billions of people to the agreement. Zarthek signed for the Zethraki, his gesture formal and respectful. Representatives from all 12 council species added their marks, making it official. The terms were generous by human standards. Reparations would be paid but spread over decades to avoid crippling the Zethraki economy. Prisoners were exchanged within weeks. Damaged colonies would receive aid not just from the Zethraki, but from the entire council, and humanity gained its seat, with full voting rights and responsibilities. After the formal ceremony, Elena found herself alone with Kreoth on an observation deck overlooking the damaged station. Below them, human and Zethraki workers labored side by side to repair the damage their war had caused. May I ask you a question? Kreoth's voice was gentle, curious. You had them beaten. Your forces were on the verge of attacking their homeworld. You could have demanded unconditional surrender, taken territory, imposed harsh terms. Why did you stop? Elena was quiet for a moment, watching the workers below. Because we've learned something important in our long, bloody history. Total victory plants the seeds of the next war. If we had crushed the Zethraki, if we had humiliated them, taken their worlds, made them suffer, they would have spent generations dreaming of revenge. Their children would have grown up hating us. Eventually, they would have been strong enough to strike back, and we would do this all over again. But you demonstrated such ferocity in battle, Kreoth said. Such willingness to sacrifice everything. Because we had to, Elena explained. When someone threatens our existence, when they leave us no choice, we fight with everything we have. But that doesn't mean we want to fight. Most humans hate war. We've seen too much of it. We know its cost. So when we fight to win, but we also fight to create a peace that will last. That seems contradictory. Elena smiled. Welcome to humanity. We're full of contradictions. We're capable of incredible cruelty and incredible compassion. We can be savage warriors and gentle healers, sometimes in the same person. We learned a long time ago that the goal of war isn't to destroy your enemy. It's to make them understand that peace is better than continued fighting. That's why we showed mercy when we could, why we rescued civilians, why we treated prisoners with respect even while we fought their soldiers to the death. Kreoth's form pulsed thoughtfully. You wanted them to see you as something other than monsters. We wanted them to see us as people, Elena corrected. People who were angry, yes, and willing to fight. But also people who could be reasoned with, negotiated with, lived with. Because that's the only way wars actually end, not with total destruction, but with the understanding that everyone would be better off choosing peace. Do you think this peace will last? I hope so, Elena said. We've given them every reason to honor it. We've shown we can be trusted, that we keep our word, that we're not interested in conquest or domination. We just want to exist, to grow, to explore the galaxy alongside others. If they honor that, we'll be the best allies they could ask for. And if they don't, Elena's expression hardened slightly, then we'll remind them why they chose peace in the first place. But I don't think it will come to that. The Zethraki are warriors, but they're not stupid. They've learned that humanity is not to be provoked. That lesson cost them dearly. I don't think they'll forget it. 6 months later, the first joint human Zethraki research station began operation. It was a small facility, studying the unusual properties of a nearby nebula. The crew was mixed, 20 humans and 20 Zethraki working together under the supervision of a Velshara administrator. Captain Marcus Chen visited the station during its opening ceremony. He had survived the war, though the Indomitable had not. His new ship, appropriately named the Phoenix, was faster and more advanced, incorporating the best of both human and alien technology. He found himself in the station's mess hall, sharing a meal with a Zethraki engineer named Kexlan. The alien had fought in the war, had lost clutchmates to human weapons. Marcus had killed Zethraki soldiers, had watched friends die in the fighting, yet here they sat, discussing the challenges of maintaining life support systems in nebula environments. Strange, isn't it? Kexlan said. A year ago we would have killed each other without hesitation. Very strange, Marcus agreed, but also hopeful. If we can get past what happened, if we can work together now, maybe the war wasn't completely pointless. Maybe some good can come from all that death. Do you hate us? For what we did to your colonies? Marcus considered the question carefully. I hate what happened. I hate that people died. But hate you personally? No. You were following orders, fighting for what you believed was right. Same as I was. The war is over. Holding on to hate would just poison everything we're trying to build now. Kexlan's mandibles clicked in a gesture Marcus had learned meant respect. You are very different from what I expected. During the war we were told humans were savages, monsters who didn't value life. But you value it greatly, don't you? More than almost anything, Marcus said. That's why we fought so hard. Because every life lost mattered to us.